Donald Trump says the war with Iran is complete pretty much and ahead of schedule. But he also suggested, as the war enters its 11th day, that he's not yet ready to declare mission accomplished. We've already won in many ways, he said, but we haven't won enough. In response, the Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi said Iran will continue its missile attacks as long as necessary. In Bahrain overnight, one person was killed and others injured after an attack on the capital, Manama. The oil prices, which surged to a 4-year high, have returned to $90 a barrel in early trading after Trump's suggestion the war would soon end, although nothing materially has changed. Iran's Revolutionary Guards said not 1 litre of oil will be exported while the attacks continue. In Australia, 5 members of the Iranian women's football team have been granted humanitarian visas after they refused to sing the national anthem during the tournament. The rest of the team is now on its way back to Iran. With the latest, here's our correspondent, Lauren Moss.
Another night of this war, another fire burning. This time in northern Iraq, where dark smoke is seen coming from the direction of the United Arab Emirates consulate, swallowing more countries into the conflict. Yesterday, a Bahrain oil refinery was aflame after being fired on by Iran. While in Tehran, rescue workers sift through the rubble. This footage released by Iranian state media, which says dozens of people were killed after strikes on this residential area of the country's capital. In his first press conference since war began, President Trump was bullish, hailing the US and Israeli operation as being weeks ahead of schedule. Reporters wanted to know the answer to the question many are asking around the world: when will it end?
Thank you, Mr. President. On Iran, you called it an excursion. You said it would be over soon. Are you thinking this week it will be over?
No,
Are you talking
but soon.
about days?
I think soon.
Okay, and with respect
Very soon.
Earlier at a conference with Republican lawmakers, Mr. Trump stressed he sees the operation as a short-term excursion, but made it clear he believes there's more to be done.
We've already won in many ways, but we haven't won enough. We go forward more determined than ever to achieve ultimate victory that will end this long-running danger once and for all.
Then came this post on social media, where the president threatened to hit Iran 20 times harder if they did anything to stop the flow of oil in the Strait of Hormuz, a crucial artery where a fifth of the world's supply is usually shipped through. Death, fire and fury will rain upon them, he says, adding that he hopes and prays it does not happen. The Iran Revolutionary Guard Corps responded saying they will determine the end of the war. It came at the end of a tumultuous day for oil prices, which saw their biggest jump since 2022. President Trump's comments claiming the end is in sight eased the markets, with the price of Brent crude oil falling from its earlier spike. But economic uncertainty continues, the knock-on effect being the cost of living. Meanwhile, in the Middle East, the sound of sirens is now familiar over many cities in Israel. Here, people in Haifa, in the north of the country, are alerted to an Iranian missile overhead. Yesterday, rockets fired from neighbouring Lebanon by the Iranian-backed militant group Hezbollah were intercepted. Israel's defence forces says strikes like these have killed nearly 2,000 Iranian troops since the fighting began. And overnight, the US released this footage, which it says shows American strikes on Iranian missiles. The UK continued its involvement yesterday, with the Defence Secretary confirming RAF fighter jets took out 2 drones, one over Jordan and another over Bahrain. And the warship HMS Dragon is set to sail to the eastern Mediterranean in the next few days, as Britain looks to bolster its defence at its base in Cyprus. Overnight, American B-1 bombers landed back at RAF Fairford in Gloucester. Signs the war is creeping ever closer. Lauren Moss, BBC News.
Well, let me bring you up to speed with some of the other important news this morning. The US Embassy in Beirut is urging US citizens to strongly consider leaving the country if they're still in Lebanon. Israel has reissued an urgent evacuation order this morning for everyone living in South Lebanon, instructing them to head north. Nearly 500 people have been killed since Israel renewed its strikes on Hezbollah. The head of the International Atomic Energy Agency, Rafael Grossi, is in Paris to meet with world leaders this morning. These are live pictures of Emmanuel Macron meeting these leaders. Mr. Grossi believes almost half of Iran's highly enriched uranium, around 200 kilos of it, is buried in a tunnel complex in Isfahan. The uranium at 60% purity could be further enriched to provide enough material for 10 nuclear bombs. Donald Trump said he had a very good call with Russian President Vladimir Putin, who, quotes, wants to be helpful. It's been reported this past week that Russia is helping Iran with coordinates of American positions. Nonetheless, the White House gave India a 30-day waiver to buy Russian oil. We're keeping an eye on the events across the Middle East. Let's get the latest from our correspondents in the region, starting with Barbara Pletasher, who is in Doha for us. What has it been like overnight, in Doha, Barbara?
Much quieter, Christian, than it was the previous night, and around the region also nothing reported here. The United Arab Emirates this morning has said it's intercepting incoming drones and missiles, and last night Kuwait said the same thing, and then you had that attack in Bahrain that hit a residential building, and a woman was killed, several injured. But as I said, it's quieter certainly than the previous day and night. However, the fire from Iran continues. You also have the Hormuz Strait still closed. That exchange between President Trump and the Iran Revolutionary Guards about it, where Mr. Trump promised fire and fury if they did not open it, and then escalated to capital letters in his Truth Social post in saying that they would be hit 20 times harder, and the Revolutionary Guards saying we will not let a liter of oil go through. So you have those kinds of performative events, but the reality is that nothing really effective is getting through. The Pakistanis have started escorting their merchant vessels with warships in the Gulf, because they rely very heavily on energy imports from the Gulf. You've also had a statement from the head of Saudi Aramco, which is the Saudi state-owned oil company, warning that this is the biggest crisis the region's energy industry has ever faced and will have a domino effect on industries around the world. So very strong concern still about where this economic crisis, never mind the military crisis, is heading.
Focus today, Barbara, on military escorts for shipping through the Strait of Hormuz, but that's provided the energy can be produced, because the LNG terminal in Qatar has been closed. There are other oil terminals that are under attack. So getting the shipping moving is one thing. Defending the energy fields is quite another.
Yes, it is. And energy experts say that, in fact, the damage done so far is not enormous. Many of these have been drone strikes, and the damage has been minimal, although we have been told by the Qataris that they were still assessing what happened to their natural gas plant. But it's not like these plants have been destroyed. I think it's more a question of the uncertainty of it, the perception of insecurity, and also the shutting down of production, because they're not sure that they can continue, and they're not sure that they can fulfill their contractual obligations, and so they have been declaring force majeure. And also, as the Hormuz Strait is blocked, the storage is filling up. So that means also production is going to decrease. It is something that the Iranians are able to disrupt fairly easily in the big scheme of things with drone attacks, because they are cheaper and easier to launch. And even if they don't do enormous damage, if they are going after energy targets like oil fields and refineries and so on, that creates havoc.
Barbara Pletasher in Doha for the moment. Thank you very much. Well, Lebanon, of course, was drawn further into this war when Hezbollah attacked Israel in response to the killing of Ayatollah Khamenei. The Lebanese President Joseph Aoun has accused Hezbollah of working to collapse the state and has expressed Beirut's readiness for direct negotiations with Israel. Let's cross to Beirut and speak to our correspondent there, Lena Sinjab. You did sort of talk to us earlier in the week, Lena, about the frustrations within the broader Lebanese population about what Hezbollah was doing. How would you assess the mood in Beirut at the moment?
I think it's beyond frustration. There is a lot of anger and worry, and more voices wanting condemnation of Hezbollah. And in fact, the statement coming from the Lebanese president yesterday is really unprecedented in the tone the president used against the group, calling it an armed faction and blaming it for the damage that it brought over the country, saying it's a betrayal for the country. And for these words to come from the president, that certainly reflects many other factions in Lebanon as well. And the president even went further to call on, direct negotiations with the Israeli. And this is unprecedented in the history of Lebanon, that has decades of war with Israel. And now, that's the level of frustration that is pushing the president to ask the world to mediate direct talks with the Israelis to put the end for the hostility and the war, and blaming Hezbollah for it.
Yeah, because for those who don't follow events in Lebanon closely, Lena, it is Hezbollah that has almost acted like the country's military.
It's certainly so when it comes to Israel, but also the wider region. I mean, if we put things a little bit into context, Hezbollah was established, trained and funded by Iran in the 1980s. That's when the first Israeli invasion into Lebanon. But throughout the years, it acted as a proxy for Iran, not only in Lebanon, but also in Syria, in Iraq, in Yemen, and here in Lebanon, especially after the 2024 war. It's really causing more and more anger among the Lebanese. In 2024, Hezbollah also said that they're launching a war against Israel in support of Gaza. And last week, they've launched rockets into Israel in what they said is solidarity because of the killing of the supreme leader of Iran, Khamenei. And even yesterday, their top parliamentarian came out to say that they're going to fight until the end. Their leader, Naim Qassem, said that this is a legitimate war against the enemy, Israel. And all of that, who is paying the price for it is the Lebanese people, and mainly the Shia community, because their areas, their villages and towns are being targeted, their homes being destroyed. And with the current situation, with the evacuation orders from the south of Litani, they have no idea if they will ever go back to their villages and towns. And everyone here, the majority of people, are blaming Hezbollah for it.
Interesting. One to watch. Lena, thank you very much for that. Israel's ambassador to France says Israel is ahead of schedule in achieving its war objectives, echoing the words we heard from Donald Trump, including weakening the country's leadership. He also said Lebanon has not yet succeeded in disarming Hezbollah. Let's go to Yolanda, who is in Jerusalem. I was just looking at some of the reporting last night from Iran. It seemed that the bombing had increased in its pace, Yolanda, and I wonder if the Israelis, in mind of what Donald Trump is saying in Washington, feel as if they're on the clock here.
Well, there hasn't been much that's been said directly about the overall strategy from Israeli leaders. That's something that's quite noticeable. They're really leaving that very much to President Trump. But the latest comments from the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, he was speaking last night and he said our aspiration is to bring the Iranian people to throw off the yoke of tyranny. And he said threateningly to the regime, we are breaking their bones and more is in store. But his comments did seem to sort of mirror those of Donald Trump from the first day of the strikes on Iran, and did seem to sort of give some possibility to the idea that, if there is not regime change, if the Iranian people do not rise up, then there is still sort of a possible exit from the war. Despite that, now in the past hour, Christian, we've had another Iranian launch that sent us off to our bomb shelter once again. It was the first time today that there had been an Iranian launch, but it shows you really how this has the potential still for millions of Israelis to cause so much disruption to their daily lives, to cause alarm. There's also been the news that another construction worker, somebody who was injured yesterday by one of these cluster munitions on an Iranian warhead, that he has died in hospital. That brings now to 12 people killed directly by missiles since the start of the war with Iran.